Hi everybody, this is Arkady Frekhtman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and today we're continuing with our deep dive into the subject of how much am I going to get? What is my lawsuit worth? My personal injury case, whether it's a car accident case, a truck accident, a trip and fall, ceiling collapse, a construction accident, and no matter what injury you have, whether it's a soft tissue injury like a bulging disc, or maybe you need a spinal fusion or other surgery like a discectomy or a laminectomy, or perhaps someone has a traumatic brain injury, what is the case worth? And in the first video, we did an overview and we talked about all of the different factors. And today I wanted to do a deep dive into one of the factors. So I think you could kind of group the factors, right? In terms of liability, and that is the issue of who is at fault. You have to be able to prove fault. After all, you are suing someone. So if the person you're suing is not to blame, they're not at fault, they didn't do anything wrong, then obviously you're not gonna win a lot of money against them. So you have to prove that the person you're suing is at fault or liable. That is the issue of liability. And you have to be able to prove it. And that may include hiring experts. So you need to have someone who's helping you, your counselor, your attorney, that's willing to spend the money, right? To hire experts. Sometimes you need an engineer. Sometimes you need a weather expert. If it's a snow, like it is today in New York, it's snowing. If it's a snow and ice case, you need a weather expert, right? No, and you're gonna need experts on liability and damages. Now, the second part is damages. And damages are your injuries. Now, but it doesn't just include your injuries, right? Damages really encompasses a lot because there are two different legal components. Number one, there's your injury, right? Your pain and your suffering for the past and for the future, meaning from the date that you got hurt up until the trial happens, and from the date the trial happens for the rest of your life. And that is calculated based on averages, life expectancy tables. And I believe right now, in New York at least, the PJI, the Pattern Jury Instructions, say that the averages are about 83 years or so, 84, maybe 84 for a lady and 83 or 82 for a man. So, you know, if you have a permanent injury, let's say you're 30 years old, well, you have 50 something years of future pain and suffering that you can recover. And it doesn't just include pain and suffering in the sense of looking at medical records and saying, oh, I have a herniated disc at L5S1, what is that worth, right? A lot of people ask me that question. Well, injuries or diagnoses in and of themselves aren't worth money, right? You have to look at it holistically. You have to look at the whole enchilada, right? It's very holistic. And what I mean by that is you have to explain what the herniated disc is, right? For example, the herniated disc means that the disc has ruptured, the liquid inside the disc is now leaking out, it's touching the nerve roots, and those are the nerve roots at L5, for example, that travel down to your legs. So now you're having shooting or radiating pain to your legs. But you also have to explain what this did to the person. Who is this person? What did they love to do? Who did they love? Who's important to them? Do they have kids? Are they married? What are their passions? Do they love going to the beach? Do they love kite surfing? Do they love bicycling? Do they love chess? You know, how has it affected them? Do they love their job and now they can't sit in a chair? They have to get up. They have to take more frequent breaks. You know, so you have to really be able to tell that story in depth through like photographic evidence. You know, maybe people have photos on their cell phone. If you're old school, you might have a photo album. And through other people, right? Who are people in your life that could tell the story? So when I say the damages, I'm really talking about the medical evidence as well as the human story. And the human story, really, the legal component, at least in New York, the way they answer that is they talk of loss of enjoyment of life. And that is enjoying your life, right? Enjoying your day-to-day, your minute-to-minute, your second-to-second interactions with everyone, your work life, your family life, your personal life, you know, whatever it may be. So, so that's really important. And it's also critical to develop themes, right? Themes of, for example, one theme could be, well, before in my life, I overcame some kind of obstacle. It could be anything. It could be that you had trouble financially, but you got back on your feet. It could be that you were told that you're not smart enough to get into a certain school, but you studied really hard, you committed yourself, and you got into that school and you succeeded, right? So you overcame certain obstacles, whatever the obstacles may be. Some people had diagnoses like for cancer or something else, and they battled back and they beat that, right? So they overcame that obstacle. And then what we want to show is now they're going to overcome this obstacle, the injury, that this injury is not something that's going to kill them. It's not something that's going to make them say, well, I just give up, and I'm just looking for a payday, but rather I'm a fighter and I overcame that before in my life, and now I'm going to overcome this. And it's always the try story. It's always the hope story. It's always that you're never stop fighting, right? So that's the kind of theme that I like to tell. But every case has its own themes. Sometimes you have themes of humiliation, how someone gets shamed or humiliated because of their injury. In one case, I had a guy who had trouble using his left hand, right? So he dropped, for example, like some pasta sauce in a supermarket, and the glass shattered everywhere and the sauce went everywhere. And he was humiliated because it was a basic thing. He wanted to buy some, to cook some pasta for his girlfriend. And this was humiliating. But there's a lot of other ways it can be humiliating. But the only way you could find out is if, as an attorney, you go to the client's house or you get on a Zoom call with them and you start asking them questions and spend time with them. Better to go to their house if you can, see how they live, how this incident has affected them. So that's the issue of damages. And then the other issue is liability. But today, and of course, you have to have the policy limits, right? The insurance has to be enough. If you're dealing with a $25,000 policy, well, you can get a $20 million verdict, but it's just going to be a paper verdict because it's only a $25,000 policy. And usually people that have $25,000 policies on their car are not going to have any assets or anything to go after. So the policy is critical. It's always important to ask for any excess, umbrella, supplemental, concurrent, or any other policies other than or in addition to the primary policy that will be disclosed. And very often, the defendants are not going to tell you about other policies. So you have to keep digging. You have to say, no, give me the policy. Let me speak to the broker who brokered the policy. Where did you get the policy? And you need affidavits from everyone, affidavits of search, affidavits from the broker, because very often people will say, we don't know about any other policies. But then later on, when we dig and we make motions and we get the court to compel or force them, they'll say, oh, by the way, we have 5 million excess. We have 25 million excess. And it happens very, very often. It just happened a few weeks ago. So the policy is critical. The venue is critical, where you are, right? Some venues are better than others. Like, for example, Brooklyn or the Bronx are probably better than Westchester, but you could do well in Westchester. There was a recent case for a $120 million verdict in Westchester. So you could do well in Westchester if you have the right case, if you present it the right way. But today I wanted to talk about the lawyer, right? What is the lawyer's role and how does the lawyer dictate value? Because when people ask me, very often they say, well, what is my case worth? But I can't really answer it because a lot of it depends on the lawyer. And I don't really know what lawyer is handling it, right? And it could be a drastic difference. And what I mean by that is there are a few factors that you have to look at. Most of all, I think that the most important factor is the issue of mindset, right? How the lawyer thinks about the case, whether the lawyer is scared to go to trial or whether the lawyer is confident, experienced, and really wants to go to trial because they love trial. They're passionate about trial and they want to get in front of that jury and they want to give the opening statement. And they want, they'll say, okay, here, I'll settle the case for a large number, like 3 million, for example. And if the defendant doesn't pay the 3 million, the lawyer actually gets excited because he says, well, now, thank you. You just made it really easy. I'm going to trial. I'm getting my verdict. And, by the way, the 3 million is off the table. I wouldn't even take it now. Now it's 5 million, and he's just ready to go, or she's ready to go. That's the way I like to do it. That's the way the top lawyers that are getting amazing results do it. And I really think that's important. So, of course, your lawyer has to be experienced. You make sure that they're a trial lawyer, that they have tried cases and gotten verdicts. Sometimes, their website might say something like an award or a settlement. Well, anybody can get a settlement. If you have a good case, you can get on the phone. They're going to give you something. Don't consider the settlement. Did they go to trial? Did they pick a jury? Were they in the middle of a trial? Did they get a verdict? And I would really focus on verdicts. Are they experienced? How many trials have they done? And are they going to be aggressive? And you could see right away, right? If you have a lawyer or if you're thinking about hiring a lawyer, one of the ways to gauge it is the way that they deal with you, right? Because if you're able to contact them, let's say you text them and they text you back, or you call them and they call you back or they answer your call. Well, that's a good sign, right? Because they're communicating with you. They're your counselor or your guide. They're holding your hand and they're walking you through this litigation, which sometimes I refer to as like the dark woods, right? Because you're a client, you don't understand all this stuff. You need the lawyer to hold your hand and guide you through the deep and dark woods and show you the path that leads out of those woods, right? At the end of the woods, the path to a successful recovery. Otherwise, you get stuck in the woods and they're deep and dark and scary and there's all sorts of lions and tigers in there or whatever, and you don't want to be there by yourself or even with a lawyer that's abandoning you in the woods, right? So how are they dealing with you? And then you can kind of check and see how are they dealing with the case. Are they requesting discovery? Are they hiring experts? Are they asking you about your biography? Are they talking to you about, what kind of person are you? Tell me about your childhood, your family. What do you like to do for Christmas, for New Year's, for Thanksgiving, for 4th of July? Because these are the things that are going to have to explain in a loss of enjoyment of life claim, right? The human story. But if they don't know you as a human being, how can they tell your human story? Well, the simple answer is they can't. And if they can't, then the jury is never going to hear your human story. And if the jury never hears it, the jury is just going to think you're just a stranger. So why should I give money to him or her? He's just a stranger. So it makes the case a lot weaker. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the way that the lawyer deals with you, right, through communication and whether they're friendly with you, whether they like speaking to you. I had this one client, I keep speaking to him. He's not my client. He's a guy who asked me for a few consults. But he says the lawyer hangs up on him. The lawyer gives him 5 minutes. He says, 5 minutes are up. That's it. He hangs up on him. It's crazy. It's like, why would you? I mean, the guy, is a little bit of a talker, but I spend an hour with him. He's a nice guy. You could tell he has a human story and he just needs somebody to he needs somebody to come in and be a sculptor and sculpt it into something beautiful. But if you're not even going to try to sculpt it, well, how can you ever have a sculpture, right? You're never going to get a sculpture if you never start sculpting. So that's kind of like my point, But the idea is you want the lawyer to be really friendly with you and to be have open lines of communication, but you also want the lawyer to push the case, right? Because when you file the lawsuit, at least in New York, you have about 30 days after you serve the lawsuit, meaning a process server says to the defendant, hey, you've been sued, here's the paper, right? That's the lawsuit. Now you need the defendant to appear in the case. And an appearance, it's called a verified answer. It just means they're going to appear with a document and they're going to say, no, we deny that we were negligent. We deny that you were so injured. We deny that you're entitled to $100 million, whatever you put in the lawsuit. They're just going to deny everything for the most part. They might admit that, yeah, we are whoever, we are Coca-Cola. We do have an office in, Brooklyn or whatever, but they're going to deny everything else. So then at that point, you have to do a bill of particulars where you explain all the injuries, and then you file for what's known as a request for preliminary conference. And that's like the first meeting with the judge where they tell you, hey, now you're going to have to exchange documents. You're going to have to give your medical records to them, and they're going to have to give documents to you depending on the type of case. If it's a ceiling collapse, you're going to want maintenance records. If it's a car crash, you're going to want property damage photos of the cars, any type of investigation, scene photos of where it happened, right? Discovery documents. And then once all that is done, all depositions are done. When they ask you questions, how did it happen? What happened? And they're going to question you and you get to question them or whoever. And you could also question non-parties, So then when all that is done, then you can certify the case as trial ready. But that's where cases kind of sometimes fall into a swamp and they get really, really delayed, like years and years, is in discovery, right? Because the defendants, what they do is they don't provide documents. They don't produce witnesses with knowledge. They'll produce a witness that doesn't know anything, some executive who sits in some, penthouse somewhere who doesn't know anything about anything. But you need the porter, the super who was actually, taking out the garbage that leaked the oil spill or the oil puddle that your client tripped on, right? Or you need the actual maintenance guy. You don't need some executive that doesn't know anything about anything. So you have to make a motion and the judge has to give you an order. So everything gets delayed. So you need somebody who's not afraid to, really go to task, to push the case, to say, look, this is the discovery that I need. I'm going to give you, of course, all your discovery that you're entitled to by law. I'm not going to give you anything that you're not entitled to. Sometimes they ask for things they're not entitled to. Don't give them that. Give them only what they're entitled to by law, and you have to request and then follow up on what you need to prove your case. And once you have everything, that you need to prove your case, you file the note of issue. So that's really, really critical that you have a lawyer that'll push the case. Otherwise, your case will just be lingering a year, 2 years, 3 years. It'll just be like in storage somewhere. Nothing will ever be happening. And so you also need a lawyer who's not afraid to spend money on experts, liability experts like engineers, safety, but also damages experts like different doctors, life care planners, economists. You need that if the case warrants it. And if they're not willing to spend the money, then you're not going to have that damages category in your trial. So you could lose. Like, for example, if I don't want to spend $5,000 for a report and $10,000 for testimony for an economist, which is $15,000, if I choose not to spend that money, I say, look, why should I spend $15,000? They might settle the case. The case has a serious injury. They might settle it for $500,000. Why should I spend that $15,000? Let me put that $15,000 in my pocket and not spend it. Now, if I go to trial, sure, I could still get a number for the pain and suffering, but I might have had a $1.5 million future economic damages claim. Now that's gone because I didn't want to spend the $15,000. And it's not just that, right? It all adds up because lawyers have a lot of cases. They might have 1,000 cases. Now it's 15,000 times 1,000, right? That's a lot. And then you're talking about, like, for example, it's not just 15,000. If you really want to go to trial, you're going to have to spend on every expert, on the doctor. Every case has different experts. Like the last trial I did, we had to spend over $100,000 because one doctor wanted 20,000, another doctor wanted 12, another wanted 15, another wanted 10. The economist was like I think 5 or 10, and then the life care planner was 10, and it all adds up. Plus the demonstratives, the 3-dimensional MRIs, the videos, the recreation. We do recreation of the liability, recreation of the damages. Different kinds of liability experts. It all adds up. So you have to be willing to find somebody who's a real trial warrior, who has a passion for this, that's going to go the distance. Otherwise, it's just not going to, you're going to be losing a lot of money. So I guess what I'm saying is that's really important. And the other thing that's really critical is that the lawyer is not in need of a quick buck, because a lot of these lawyers, what they're doing is they're advertising on like billboards. They never go to court. They'll just farm your case out to somebody else. Or if they're going to handle the case themselves in-house, what they'll do is they'll just settle it. They'll settle it, because they feel like, look, that's a good enough number. Like somebody has an arthroscopic surgery, let's say on their shoulder, on their knee, and they get $75,000. Well, they're going to think, well, look, that's a quick $25,000 to me. I could do more advertising, or I could use that money to pay my mortgage, or to do whatever, buy my wife a diamond ring, whatever they want to do. But you know what I'm saying? Like they're in need of a quick buck. Maybe they have to meet payroll. Maybe they have to, hire someone, whatever the expenses. Maybe they want to, make a payment on their boat, or their, I don't know, whatever their expenses. But what I'm saying is it's not ethical, and it's not in the best interests of the client, because they're settling a case, let's say for 75, because they need that 25. But in reality, that case maybe can go for 300 if it just gets worked up the right way, right? Or if it goes all the way to trial, it could be worth maybe 500. Like I've done scope cases where I've settled them for over 500, even settled them for like over 700, simple arthroscopic surgery cases. So it all just, depends on how you work it up and how far you're willing to go. So you make sure that your lawyer is like financially stable, that they either have access to capital through an outside company, or they have enough, money themselves that they're willing to take your case all the way, because you don't want to be a victim of somebody who's just like, wants a quick buck, or is just, it doesn't even have to be that they don't have the money. It just could be that they don't want to spend it for whatever reason, right? There's so many things. So you have to be careful with that. And then the final thing is just the overall mindset, right? The mindset of the lawyer and the mindset of the law firm. Is the lawyer going to CLEs, continuing legal educations? Are they watching any type of trial workshops? Are they going to any kind of conferences? Or are they just stuck in like 1950, the way that people did it back then? Because a lot of lawyers, I'm really surprised. I go to court in New York especially, it's so antiquated. People are trying a case like it's 1952, and they're doing things way, way, way in a backwards way. Whereas today there's a lot of cutting edge technology. You could be using artificial intelligence. You could be using demonstratives. Instead of showing an old MRI on a regular MRI that's black and white that nobody could even understand what it is. You can do a 3-dimensional MRI where you can actually see the herniation, leaking from the disc, touching the nerve root, and you could actually turn it left or right, up and down, and watch it from every angle. And not just 3-dimensional, you could also do a color MRI where the leak from the disc is red and you see it going into the spinal cord and actually impinging on the nerves, like the nerves in the thecal sac and other nerves. You could visualize it, and I've done that in many cases, but it's expensive, So that's one thing. And just the overall way that they think, because I think the biggest thing is you have to think in terms of a growth mindset, right? I'm not saying to be unrealistic, right? If a case is worth $1 million, don't go in there and say, hey, I want 20 million and just like pound the table. That's a waste of time, right? You're going to look at you like you're crazy. I'm not saying to do that, but what I'm saying is, look, believe in your case and evaluate your case. Speak to other lawyers, do focus groups. Focus groups are just people from the community. Do it in that particular venue, whether it's in the Bronx. When we had a Bronx trial, we did a focus group in the Bronx, and they told us, hey, this case is going to be worth multiple millions of dollars, many, many millions of dollars. And then when we did the trial, that's what we got, many millions of dollars. Do a focus group, whether it's in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, wherever it is, even if it's in Texas or Florida or California, it doesn't matter. You want to do a focus group. It's not expensive, and you'll get a lot of feedback. And that's how a jury is going to think, because you've already tested it with this focus group, right? And then just overall, I think what you have to do is you have to put a fair value and a fair number. And then you tell the defendants, look, pay me this number, pay me $3 million. You have 30 days. If you don't, that's fine. But just know that after this deadline expires, after the 30 days are up, it's not going to be $3 million anymore. It's going to be 5, and stick to it. Don't go back, because then they say this guy's bluffing. He's a blowhard. Don't do that. Stick to it, and then it'll be 5, and then that will get them to pay you more money. And I just think that entire way of preparing a case is from a position of strength, right? Because I've evaluated all the injuries. I have all the experts. I've talked to my client. I know their human story. So now I actually really like my client because I understand their human story. I know their wife, I know their kids, I know their friends, I know people that knew them before, like their neighbors, their coworkers. I know people that knew them after, that could talk about how they changed, whether it's because of a brain injury or what have you, and I could go to court armed that I have all these community witnesses, I have my clients, and I'm strong and I'm ready to go. So if they don't pay me the $3 million, okay, it's going to be 5. And if you're not going to pay the 5, great. Let's go to trial, and we're going to get more than that at trial, as opposed to the other way, right, which is the old school way. And I had a thought recently. I was actually on a call with a client, and during the call, I was just walking around. It was actually the weekend, and I was on a call, and I was walking outside while talking to this client, and all of a sudden it hit me, because I did another video where I asked the question, well, why don't lawyers tell you what your case is worth? And I think one of the reasons why is because they negotiate in the old school way. And it's not from a position of strength. It's not from a growth mindset where you set the number, but rather it's where the insurance company controls the purse strings, and the insurance company controls everything, right? They give you the offer, and you're just like they're the puppeteer and you're like the puppet. They're controlling you. They're pulling the strings. And so what I mean by that is, they'll ask for a demand, right? For example, they'll say, oh, my demand is $850. And then the insurance company will say, oh my God, are you crazy? That's so high. That's not worth $850. This isn't a $1 million case. How about 20,000? And then what the insurance company wants you to do is get into that ballpark of, let's say, 20,000, and then if they settle it for 90,000, oh my God, it sounds like you did a great job, because the first offer was 20 and they went all the way up to 90. But you can never go back to 850, and you could never go for $1 million or $2 million or $3 million. Forget it, right? Because you started at 850 and they started at 20, and they want you to come down, right? They want to whittle you away and just chisel you down and get you down to as low as possible and settle for that number. And that's why the attorney doesn't want to tell you what your case is worth, because he doesn't know how far the insurance company is going to whittle him away. How low is the insurance company going to cut his demand? and he or she just doesn't know, right? How do they know? Because they're not controlling the negotiations. Now, I could say what a case is worth because I evaluate it myself. I do it with focus groups, and then I say, look, this is $1 million case. Pay me the $1 million. No, fine, it's going to be 2. And then, by the way, once I pick a jury, it's going to be 3. And once I finish my opening, it's going to be 5. And then the insurance companies, their mind gets blown and they pay. I'm not saying they always pay me exactly what what I ask. I don't control everything. I'm not like Wizard of Oz, but they always pay me a lot more than I would have gotten if I didn't use this strategy. So I think this mindset is really a critical component. And it's not just the lawyer handling the case, but it's the entire, firm. Everybody in the firm has to work together and has to have that growth mindset and has to believe that they can achieve civil justice on behalf of an injury victim, as opposed to, people that really in their heart of hearts, they don't believe in these cases. They think like, oh, you're injured, you're looking for a payday, it's the lawsuit lottery, you should be happy with anything, you're bothering me, why are you calling? That's a completely different mindset, and you don't want that mindset to, to poison your guide. If you have a guide, somebody who's holding your hand and your counselor and helping you, you don't want that mindset. You want the mindset of strength and the mindset of, positivity and the mindset of taking a jury verdict, preparing the case to the hilt so you can take a jury verdict. And then because the insurance company sees, hey, you've done all your subpoenas, all the records are in, your trial preparation is immaculate, you have all your exhibits, you have all your witnesses lined up, they're like, well, these guys aren't bluffing. If I don't pay, they're going to go to trial. And then that's what gets them to pay. Because if I don't have that, if I just say, hey, give me money, they're going to know it's a bluff and they're going to pay, or they're going to pay much less, or they're going to say, you know what, no, let's go to trial. And you can't go to trial because you haven't done all of that, right? There's a lot of preparation that you have to do. So I hope this was helpful, but I really think that's a major, major factor, your lawyer. So that's one of the reasons I can't answer your questions when people, text me and they say, well, what's my case worth? I had like a herniated disc, or I had like a shoulder surgery. First of all, I don't even know where it is, what's happening with it. The only way to know is really to open the file and do a deep dive and review it. But even that, if you show the same file to 2 different lawyers, one who's like the old school way, he might say, oh, that's worth 500. And another one who's doing it the new school way might say, you know what, that case could be worth 5 million, right? So even that isn't enough, but there's just so many factors, and it's not an exact science. So I hope this was helpful. Let us know what other questions you have. Please like and subscribe to our channel. And please, leave us some comments letting us know what videos you want to see so we could record those for you. And we'll keep doing the Last Week Tonight lives where we answer your questions live, as well as some recorded ones from the comments in the YouTube channel. And maybe we'll keep going with this, how much is my case worth theme, because this was mostly about the lawyer, but I could do another one. There's some other components, right? Like the damages component, which we could do a deep dive into damages, which includes the human story, as well as obviously the pain and suffering and the emotional distress and all the types of damages you could recover, including economic damages, right? Loss of enjoyment, loss of salary, lost wages, as well as loss of or future medical expenses. Those are all economic damages, and then the non-economic damages. And then we could talk about venue, good venues, bad venues, picking a jury, making sure that you have a jury that can allow for a large amount. And then of course we could talk about liability, and that'll really round up all of the different factors that go into what a case could be worth. And then maybe we could do another series later that talks about the process and each step in the process. I've done some before, but they were kind of short. So maybe we could do a deeper dive into filing a lawsuit, depositions, discovery, putting the case on the trial calendar, negotiating a case, mediations, as well as trial preparation and trial, and how to handle it. So we look forward to that. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day. Like and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, just text me 347-566-9595. I'm happy to do a personal consult. Just let me know what the case is about. I have a little link to a form, or you could just tell me like, hey, this is what happened, the facts, these are my injuries, this is my city, my name, and then we could schedule something, and I'll try to schedule it, within the week or so. I'll try to be as quick as I can. I still have my law work to do too, but I want to help as many people as I can. Okay, have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.